From a man whose inner thoughts sound like the comment section of a controversial YouTube video, this is the Daniel Natal Show. Harcourt Kirkwood has an interesting article in the New American Magazine called "This Family Stands for Selling Out." It starts out, "One of the remarkable business success stories of the 21st century must be that of Hunter Biden, the 50-year-old son of Joe Biden. Despite the younger Biden being a drug addict, despite the Navy discharging him for this addiction, and despite other personal problems, global business giants sought his counsel and paid him handsomely. Burisma Holdings, the Ukrainian natural gas company at the center of the Biden-Burisma influence peddling scheme, paid him millions. An energy businessman in China nearly formed an investment company with Hunter and his business partners, and what Rudy Giuliani, an advisor to President Trump, calls the Biden crime family. According to whistleblower and former business partner Tony Bobulinski, the older Biden would use the younger Biden as a money laundering vehicle, ostensibly getting the lucrative jobs for the son, when in reality, money was funneled back to Joe. It's significant that many of the companies that funneled bribes to the family were energy companies like Burisma or CEFC China Energy. This is not coincidental. And it dovetails with recent stories that Biden will rescind the cross-border permit for TC Energy's Keystone XL pipeline on his first day in office, three sources confirmed to Politico. The move is billed as one of Biden's day one climate change actions, according to a presentation circulating among Washington trade groups and lobbyists, a portion of which was seen by Politico. To understand what's going on, one has to understand certain concepts about economics. According to economist Adam Smith in 1776, the price of all products is composed of three elements: the cost of rent, the cost of industrial machinery, and the cost of labor. If you can lower the cost of any of these three factors, you can lower the cost of your product and obtain a competitive advantage in the market. The Chinese have been using slave labor to lower the cost of goods manufactured there. As a result, they can create TVs that are cheaper than American counterparts or shirts that are less expensive. Consumers will buy these and put American companies out of business. America was not without leverage, though. Not too long ago, we made a breakthrough with fracking and were able to extract more oil out of shale, thus setting America on a course for energy independence. A fundamental rule of economics is that if you make something more common, the price comes down. In consequence, as the United States generated more oil, the spot price dropped. According to geopolitical strategist Peter Zeihan, this created a magnetic pool of companies to flood into the U.S. After all, energy is an even bigger cost to a company than labor. If energy was cheaper in America, then it might even overcome China's slave labor advantage. China, of course, did not want businesses pulling up stakes in Beijing and moving companies to Wisconsin to create jobs in America. The Chinese Communist Party is already on shaky ground there. If they lose market share, then the political situation there might be just enough for the CCP to lose power. Desperate, their goal is to bribe U.S. politicians at every level to create legislation that will purposely sabotage America's energy policy to keep those companies in Asia. We've seen this before. According to Canadian energy expert Marin Katusa in his book, The Colder War, Russia bribed politicians in the United States to sabotage their own nation's energy independence by passing laws making it harder for U.S. companies to get permits to mine uranium. The United States used to be number one in the field. We invented it. We created the whole concept of nuclear power plants. 1 out of 5 homes in America relies on nuclear power to keep the lights on. But today, America has sunk to number 16 on the list of uranium producers, with Kazakhstan topping the list. Russia's up there as well. Uzbekistan too, Turkmenistan, etc. Basically, it's all Russia and its satellite states, countries within its orbit. Well, how did they gain such an ascendancy? Were American companies uncompetitive? Did they cease to innovate? Did they have infertile minds, less skilled engineers? No. America dominated every category. What happened was that Russia bribed our politicians to hobble American companies and to make it almost impossible to gain permits and licenses. This was done under the mask of environmental concerns. In reality, a foreign state actor suborned our politicians with fat kickbacks to places like the Clinton Foundation, and our politicians sabotaged their own country to, say, give a third of America's uranium to Putin. After that, other foreign state actors like China and OPEC were behind funneling cash to our politicians to create things like the Green New Deal. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's chief of staff admitted openly that the Green New Deal was not about climate change at all. It was about destroying capitalism. As most of you already know, the so-called environmental movement is not really about the environment. It's a shiny, happy way to sabotage our economy and put an appealing face on it. Who, after all, doesn't want clean air or pristine rivers? But that's not what's actually behind it. None other than left-wing godfather Noam Chomsky said that back in the 70s, a decision had been taken to transition America away from a productive economy to a financial economy. In other words, they were going to change us from a Henry Ford-style economy where we made things to a casino capitalist economy where we made Goldman Sachs-style paper profits off of, say, subprime mortgages. Wall Street determined that it would be more advantageous to gut America's industrial base and send all manufacturers to places like China to take advantage of the slave labor. This would, of course, devastate America's workers. But who cares? The small kleptocratic elite at the top would make a fortune, even as income disparities widened. For decades, neoliberal economic propagandists went around singing the praises of what they called globalization. In a fascinating turn of events, even the Council on Foreign Relations magazine Foreign Policy had an article entitled Economists on the Run. To everyone's shock, longtime globalization propagandists like Paul Krugman finally admitted how bad globalization was for America's middle class. The article says Krugman and other mainstream trade experts are now admitting that they were wrong about globalization. It hurt American workers more than they thought it would. So how did Wall Street initially trick America into sending their companies to China? One method was framing it as concerns for the environment. Americans would never have willingly agreed to destroy their middle class if that was the choice being offered to them. No, it sounded much better if they were obliquely conned into thinking it was about cleaner aquifers and rescued woodchucks. In The Price of Everything, Eduardo Porter points out that one of the earliest environmental propaganda hooks was passing laws against sulfur dioxide in the 1970s. This was purposely targeted to affect factories in America as a prelude to sending them to China. Of course, the world's global emissions didn't cease by doing this, as the public was told. No, the emissions actually got more exaggerated. After all, China, as it so happens, is on the same planet as America, so by shifting a company from one continent to another, it didn't diminish emissions. It made them worse, since China has no environmental laws and polluted far worse than America. But the public wasn't told this. It was tricked into thinking that it was helping the climate by getting rid of all those high-paying American jobs. Wall Street won, and our income disparity increased. This, of course, had more than just economic ramifications. America now has the distinction of being the only first world country with a rising suicide rate. According to the American Psychological Association, Princeton University economists Ann Case and Angus Deaton have shown that deaths from suicide, drugs, and alcohol have risen steeply among white middle-aged Americans since 2000. They argue these deaths of despair are linked to a deterioration of economic and social well-being among the white working class. As Joe Biden and his son Hunter get more kickbacks and bribes from China, their job is to see that America's energy sector is sabotaged to keep those jobs squarely in Beijing. This will allow the Chinese Communist Party to retain their fragile grip on power in China while obstructing millions of businesses from returning to the United States to take advantage of our low energy costs. Without things like fracking or the Keystone pipeline, millions of Americans will remain out of work and in despair. But don't worry, our political class will get rich, even as the country around them declines into a third world nation. Could reading the New American magazine boost your heart health, support your immune system, and help you lose 20 pounds of unsightly fat? The answer is no. But you should read it anyway. It'll keep you informed and provide information that cuts through the noise of lesser news outlets. thenewamerican.com. And don't forget to subscribe to us on social media and hit that like button.